Hello and welcome to the Dot Connector. Well, it's been another week of machine gun fire executive orders coming from Trump in the United States, and this is no surprise. As I've been saying in the weeks and weeks in the run-up to the inauguration, we're going to see so many diversions that make you look one way and think, oh, we're winning, when the real agenda is going on behind that smokescreen. And I've talked in the last two Dot Connectors about one of those themes, one of those agendas, which is AI, the AI human fusion and the takeover of the system and government by artificial intelligence. But this week, another aspect of the agenda has come into more prominence, and that is Israel. What I've been saying is the Israel agenda of Trump is to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians from Gaza and eventually Israel in general. And this week, as I'll come to, the great hero has suggested precisely that. Also, the plan is for the demolition of the Al-Aqsa Mosque on what Christians and Jews call Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and its replacement with the third, quote, Solomon's Temple. Now, if you're involved in the absolute military dominance of the Palestinians, and you are on the way to trying to move them out, then suddenly that becomes doable. That Solomon's Temple replacing the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But what you'll also notice, if you've been following this, is that after the temporary ceasefire in Gaza, the Israeli government and military have turned their focus to the West Bank, which is supposed to be the occupied West Bank of Palestinians. But over a long period of time, more and more Jewish settlers have moved in, taken over homes, taken over land. And now we have the military involved in operations in the West Bank, in which still more Palestinians are being killed. And to kind of explain the background to all this, we have to come to the name Adelson. It was Sheldon Adelson, the casino magnate, the late casino magnate, who gave Trump $200 million, at least, in the first two of his election campaigns. And in giving that, he was buying Trump's allegiance to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which he did in his first term, and also to recognize the Syrian land, known as the Golan Heights, as Israeli land. So now his surviving wife, Miriam Adelson, has given $100 million to Trump's recent election campaign. And for that, the deal is that Trump recognizes and supports the annexation of the West Bank by Israel. And that is, of course, on the road to the greater Israel, which includes many countries around what we currently call Israel. So what's happening now in the West Bank in relation to that deal is par for the course, really. But it went further this week because, I know what it's like to be targeted for, quote, anti-Semitism. They make it up and they just fire it at you as often as they can to the point where people believe it. And I've been targeted by the Zionist mafia since the mid-1990s. That's when it started. And I'm currently banned from nearly 30 European countries and Australia for the same fake reason. And what they do is they use anti-Semitism, which is a misnomer because the Semites are the Arabic people. They use anti-Semitism as a weapon to discredit and silence those who are pointing out things that the Israeli government and military and intelligence operations like Mossad don't want people to hear, don't want people to know. And so I was the least surprised person in the world this week when Donald Trump, owned by Israel, announced that he was going to target anti-Semitism in the United States. But before I get to that story, this is Trump, the free speech hero, talking at his inauguration.
After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law.
Oh, so Trump is the free speech absolutist. Is he really? What happened to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution when Trump announced this? It's a story from the New York Post. Trump ordering review to identify, punish, and deport anti-Semites, including students on visas. Now, who decides who's an anti-Semite and who is simply criticizing the horrors perpetrated by the Israeli government? Oh, well, Trump does, the authorities do. And that's the game. we say we're going to target anti-Semitism, but we decide what that means and who it applies to. President Trump is signing an executive order instructing all federal agencies to identify civil and criminal authorities available to combat anti-Semitism, including finding ways to deport anti-Jewish activists who violate laws. The order requires agency and department leaders to provide the White House with recommendations within 60 days and outlines plans for the Justice Department to investigate pro-Hamas graffiti and intimidation, including on college campuses, according to a document describing the order. It calls for the deportation of resident, quote, aliens, including students with visas who broke laws as part of the anti-Israel protests following the October the 7th, 2023 attacks in Israel, which sparked the invasion of Gaza, the document reviewed by the Post says. Well, maybe people are just sickened by the mass slaughter of civilians, men, women, and children, enormous numbers of children, that has gone on since October the 7th at the hands of the Israeli government and military. Maybe they're just sickened by that. Oh, no, that's anti-Semitic. And interesting, isn't it? You can be called an anti-Semite for criticizing and calling out mass slaughter. That's a terrible thing. But if you're cheering on the said Israeli government and military, and you're saying that the mass slaughter of the innocent is just Israel having the right to defend itself, and everything's completely fine, then nothing happens to you. There is no censorship of that. Why? Because you're saying what those in power are happy for you to say. And 6 Republican-led House committees issued a report last month, this article says, calling for the federal government to do more to address anti-Semitism, including by conditioning federal aid to colleges to force stricter policies against anti-Jewish bias. And it says, hate speech generally is legal in the United States, but the House Republican report released last month argues that federal law bars recipients of taxpayer funds from tolerating discrimination, which can be interpreted as having an opinion the authorities don't like, allowing a way to force recipients to stiffen policies. Federal courts have found that non-citizens have fewer free speech rights. Well, actually, surely everyone in the world, ideally, should have the same free speech rights. So Trump's attempt to crack down on anti-Semitism, including likely by withholding federal funds, comes on the heels of his orders to temporarily freeze federal aid and the distribution of pending federal grants, the latter of which was poised Tuesday by a federal judge. Absolute madness, that pause. I think it's been withdrawn now, but the impact on the population, many of them that actually supported Trump, has been ridiculous and fundamental to their lives. So, as I said earlier, this Israel theme has been a theme of the week. And I've been saying over the years, never mind recent weeks, that the idea is to ethnically cleanse Israel, eventually, of Palestinians. And would you believe it? Yes, I would actually, if I'm honest. Donald Trump has suggested just that this week. He was speaking on a plane to reporters and suggested that maybe the Palestinians in Gaza could be moved to Egypt and Jordan, because then they would have peace. And that just happens to be exactly what the plan has been all along.
I said to him, I'd love you to take on more, because I'm looking at the whole Gaza Strip right now, and it's a mess. It's a real mess.
Those comments coming from U.S. President Donald Trump while speaking with reporters regarding his latest conversation with the King of Jordan.
You'd like Jordan to house people from Gaza?
To take people. I'd like Egypt to take people. I'm talking to General El-Sisi tomorrow, sometime, I believe. And I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. You're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing.
The president saying he plans to speak with Egyptian officials Monday about moving more than 1 million Palestinians from Gaza into neighboring countries.
Something has to happen, but it's literally a demolition site right now. Almost everything's demolished, and people are dying there. So I'd rather get involved with some of the Arab nations and build housing in a different location where they can maybe live in peace.
These comments marking a stunning proposal from a sitting U.S. president, one that has already sparked condemnation, including from Jordan's foreign minister.
Our stance that the two-state solution is the path to achieving peace is firm and unchanging. Our rejection of displacement is also firm and unchanging. This is not only a steadfast and unwavering position of the kingdom, but it is also a necessity for achieving the security, stability, and peace that we all desire.
I always have a little shake of the head when I hear people still talking about a two-state solution. Just have a look at the map of Israel and how the Israelis have been taking over what's left of Palestinian land. And there is no land left for a two-state solution. All around the world, you have these politicians, we believe in the two-state solution. That's just buying time and just giving an irrelevant opinion, a holding pattern. There is no two-state solution. It's not going to happen. What Israel wants is a one-state solution. And interestingly, Trump was talking about moving Palestinians out of Gaza into Jordan and into Egypt. Well, if you put aside the recent massive amounts of money that have been handed to Ukraine, take that aside, Israel is the biggest recipient of funding from the United States. Second is Egypt. And third is Jordan. And you wonder how much, shall we say, negotiating power that might give to Trump in his ambitions to get rid of the Palestinians out of Interestingly, His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a lifelong friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, said the same, pretty much, on, this is a report anyway, from 19th of March of last year. Jared Kushner says Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable. Exactly what Trump has said recently. Jared Kushner has praised the very valuable potential of Gaza's waterfront property and suggested Israel should move civilians while it cleans up the strip. Didn't Trump say that this week? I do believe he did. The former property dealer, Kushner, married to Donald Trump's daughter Ivanka, made the comments in an interview at Harvard University. Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable if people would focus on building up livelihoods, Kushner said. It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up. He cares, you see. I don't think that Israel has stated that they don't want people to move back there afterwards. Well, what Trump said was, well, it could be temporary. That's not the plan. Or it could be long-term. That is the plan. I mean, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. And you'll also see the bloody bullshit to try to stop you seeing what that journey is. So now perhaps people can grasp the nature of this so-called ceasefire that is just another holding position, allows hostages to be freed. That's all good. But the idea, and Netanyahu said this, is that once this first stage of the ceasefire is over, bang, they're at it again. And given what's happening in the West Bank, you believe him. And so the other thing is we can now see what October the 7th was really about. And why, as I've been saying since it happened, it was allowed to happen by the Israeli government, military, and intelligence networks. The most defended border fence on earth was breached multiple times by Hamas. That if you look at Hamas's history, it has fundamental connections to the Israeli government. And there was no response, as you would normally have. Why? Why was that allowed to happen? First of all, because the people that run Israel and have run it from the start don't give a damn about Jewish people. That's the truth. They're just fodder to be used and abused to advance their agenda. But it was allowed to happen because of what has happened since. This devastation throughout the Gaza Strip that has now led to, oh, well, we should move the Palestinians out because we care, so we can take over the land. Unbelievable. And on that very subject, we have now had a law passed in Israel that will jail people for what they call October the 7th denial. And the reason this law has been passed, never mind the bullshit, is to stop people talking about the fact that it was allowed to happen. This is the story. Knesset passes law mandating 5 years in jail for denial of October 7th massacre. Anything to say about the Gaza massacre? Oh, no, that's okay. Just defending yourself, weren't you? Yeah, that's all we're doing. Modeled after the 1986 law banning Holocaust denial, legislation requires 5-year prison terms for denying the atrocities with the intention of defending or identifying with Hamas, which is open to interpretation, of course. As always, a law criminalizing the denial, minimalization, and celebration of the Hamas terror group's October 7th attack on southern Israel passed its third and final reading 16-0 in the Knesset on Tuesday. Anyone who says this is the law, anyone who says or writes things denying the October 7th massacre with the intention of defending the terrorist organization Hamas and its partners, expressing sympathy for them or identifying with them, will be sentenced to 5 years in jail. How about anyone who identifies with Benjamin Netanyahu, who has overseen and ordered the mass murder of tens of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza? Oh, that's all right. Yeah. Anyone who tries to deny Hamas's heinous crimes is an active partner in spreading lies and incitement that undermine the foundations of our society, said one of the bill's sponsors following the law's passage. And against this background that I'm describing, it's worth reminding ourselves of what has actually gone on in Gaza since October the 7th, which you're now not allowed to say or have a different opinion of it. That's the truth of this, really. Worth reminding ourselves of what has happened. This is not for the faint-hearted, by the way.
The worst thing about the Gaza Holocaust is knowing it will happen again. The official death toll from the Israeli assault on Gaza has continued to climb at about the same rate it was climbing before the ceasefire went into effect, despite the ceasefire more or less holding. This is because the pause in the slaughter has given Palestinians the opportunity to dig up the remains of those who've been buried under the rubble all this time, allowing some to be added to the Gaza Health Ministry's count. Even if the ceasefire continues to hold, we can expect the death toll from violent trauma to keep climbing for a very long time. The footage we are seeing from places like Rafah and Jabalia are completely apocalyptic, with hardly any visible structures remaining even partially vertical. Many of the dead have been lying there for over a year. Many would have died slow, agonizing deaths over hours or days, trapped beneath the wreckage without the possibility of rescue. Journalist Craig Murray wrote on Twitter that, contrary to Western propaganda, Gaza health authorities took a conservative approach to casualty figures, listing only recovered identified bodies. Now hundreds of unaccounted bodies are being dug up from the rubble daily. Mothers are digging for the skeletons of their children. I remember back in the early days of the Gaza Holocaust, you'd get mobbed by Israel apologists on social media if you described what you were seeing as carpet bombing. They'd show photos of Dresden or Hamburg and say, "This is what real carpet bombing looks like." And those photos looked exactly like the footage we are seeing of the wreckage of Gaza today.
And now, with this temporary ceasefire, they are turning their eyes on the West Bank for reasons I've described. Now, America, the American government, is basically owned by Israel, not least through massive funding of American politicians and their election campaigns. And the Trump administration, like other administrations before them, by the way, is awash with Israel-centric people, Israel-place people who are going to do what Israel wants. And like I say, the Trump administration is full of them, including him, by the way. Trump is reported to have received $230 million in contributions to his campaign from pro-Israel groups, 100 million of that from Miriam Adelson. And I saw this video this week, which is very, very good. And it's by the rapper and journalist Loki. And it highlights just some of these Israel place people in the Trump administration. And it's a video for Double Down News.
Donald Trump has assembled the most pro-Israel cabinet in the history of the United States. I've investigated his funders. It's not looking good. Donald Trump will repeat the mantra,
America first. America first. America first.
but when you look down his list of funders, it seems like it might just be Israel first. Donald Trump selected Pete Hegseth as his Secretary of Defense. Pete Hegseth called for Trump to bomb Iranian energy and nuclear facilities.
What better time than now to say, we're starting the clock. You've got a week. You've got X amount of time before we start taking out your energy production facilities. We take out key infrastructure. We take out your missile sites. We take out nuclear developments.
That is
we
not
take out
a popular idea.
capabilities.
And here Hegseth is advocating for Israel replacing Al-Aqsa with what he calls the Third Temple.
1948 was a miracle. 1967 was a miracle. 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle. And there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible.
And what about Trump's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee? He has publicly claimed there is no occupation of the West Bank, and he refuses to refer to the West Bank as anything but Judea and Samaria.
There is no such thing as a West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. There's no such thing as a settlement. They're communities, they're neighborhoods, they're cities. There's no such thing as an occupation.
Trump has also selected Elise Stefanik as his U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She's someone who has gone on record as saying that nothing Israel ever does could cause the United States to remove funding from it.
There is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel. No excuse, full stop. That's why I'm proud to have sponsored or backed every measure to aid Israel that has come before the United States Congress. Every single one.
What chance have the Palestinians ever had of justice? And it goes on. Trump makes 2,000-pound bombs available to Israel, undoing Biden pause. Republican President Donald Trump says he has instructed the U.S. military to release a hold imposed by Democrat former President Joe Biden on the supply of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. Washington says it is helping Israel defend against Iran-backed militant groups like Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Houthis in Yemen. And lest we forget, Trump has removed all restrictions on weapons sales to Israel. Some restrictions existed before he came to power. And his stop on foreign aid that he instigated in the last few days did not include Israel, can't believe it, falls into shock and did not include military funding for Egypt, one of the countries that Trump wants to send the Palestinians. And another shock, I don't know how my body can stand it, Netanyahu to meet with Trump at the White House next week. Really? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to become the first foreign leader to meet with President Trump during his second term with a trip to the White House next week. A White House official confirmed to NBC News that Trump had extended an invitation, was told to extend an invitation to Netanyahu, and that he accepted. Netanyahu's office said they agreed to meet on February the 4th. I look forward to discussing how we can bring peace to Israel. Well, that's a bloody first then, Bibi. And its neighbors, you don't give a shit. And efforts to counter our shared adversaries, advance the agenda that's been playing out since Israel was formed in 1948. This is just the start of the story. So that's the end of the public part of the Dot Connector this week. If you want to see the rest, and I've got loads of things to talk about, including this DeepSeek Chinese AI operation that's got a lot of knickers in a twist in America. And if you want to see that part of the Dot Connector, then go to Ickonic.com every Thursday from 5 o'clock UK time. So for subscribers to Ickonic, let's change the subject, although of course it's all connected. This week in the United States, like I say, a lot of knickers have got well twisted over the emergence of a Chinese AI system called DeepSeek, which is undercutting in price the American Western systems like ChatGPT of the open AI operation of people like Sam Altman, who is, of course, also involved in this Stargate AI extravaganza announced at a White House press conference by Donald Trump. Now, it would seem on the surface that what we have is competition. So, the Chinese, they're coming, and what we're going to do, and so it's all been going on, and share prices have dropped and what have you in response to it of American companies. But what I've been trying to get across over the years is that we're dealing with a global cult, and it doesn't have borders. Borders, countries, are for public consumption and diversion. It operates globally. So to it, China and the United States and Europe are just different divisions of the same cult. So while on the surface, maybe symbolically at this level of the pyramid, it's like, it's competition, what's going to happen to Western AI companies and what have you, and China's going to come in. But actually, as I have emphasized over and over again, forget the words, watch the outcomes. And what the outcome of this competition is going to be is AI playing out everywhere. And a momentum that says, we've got to put more money into AI because the Chinese are ahead of us and all that stuff. when the outcome is more and more expansion of artificial intelligence in terms of control of human society. So this is a mainstream media report about the, quote, shock waves that poured through Silicon Valley with the emergence of this DeepSeek. And although this is a mainstream report, but the picture is much bigger than described here.
It was a technological leap that shocked Silicon Valley. A newly unveiled, free, open source AI model that beat some of the most powerful ones on the market. But it wasn't a new launch from OpenAI or model announcement from Anthropic. This one was built in the East by a Chinese research lab called DeepSeek. And the details behind its development stunned top AI researchers here in the US. First, the cost. The AI lab reportedly spent just $5.6 million to build DeepSeek version 3. Compare that to OpenAI, which is spending $5 billion a year. And Google, which expects capital expenditures in 2024 to soar to over $50 billion. And then there's Microsoft that shelled out more than $13 billion just to invest in OpenAI. But even more stunning, how DeepSeek's scrappier model was able to outperform the lavishly funded American ones.
To see the DeepSeek new model, it's super impressive in terms of both how they have really effectively done an open source model that does what is this inference time compute, and it's super compute efficient.
It beat Meta's Llama, OpenAI's GPT-4o, and Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 3.5 on accuracy on wide-ranging tests, a subset of 500 math problems, an AI math evaluation, coding competitions, and a test of spotting and fixing bugs in code. Quickly following that up with a new reasoning model called R1, which just as easily outperformed OpenAI's cutting-edge O1 in some of those third-party tests.
Today, we released Humanity's Last Exam, which is a new evaluation or benchmark of AI models that we produced by getting, math, physics, biology, chemistry professors to provide the hardest questions they could possibly imagine. DeepSeek, which is the leading Chinese AI lab, their model is actually the top performing, or roughly on par with the best American model.
And to emphasize the point I'm making, we have this story. Donald Trump warns DeepSeek could be or should be wake-up call for America's AI industry. The US president wants US tech companies to dominate artificial intelligence, but acknowledges the challenge posed by the low-cost rival DeepSeek. The US president spoke of his belief that the success of the Chinese firm could be helpful to America's AI aspirations. The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win, Trump said in Florida. What have I just said? That's exactly what the game is. Fake competition to get AI everywhere. On Monday, the DeepSeek assistant had surpassed ChatGPT in downloads from Apple's App Store, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said, "We obviously deliver much better models, and also it's legit invigorating to have a new competitor. We will pull up some releases." All the same recurring theme. We must fight competition from China by expanding and expanding and expanding AI. So the outcome is planned to be an AI explosion in the guise of competition and bringing about the transformation of human society. And this is Sam Altman of OpenAI and Stargate saying exactly that but in the mildest of terms.
I still expect, although I don't know what, and this is over a long period of time. This is not a like next year or, the year after that kind of thing. But over a long period of time, I still expect that there will be some change required to the social contract, given how powerful we expect this technology to be. I'm not a believer that there won't be any jobs. I think we always find new things to do. But I do think like the whole structure of society itself will, be up for some degree of debate and reconfiguration.
As with the situation in Israel, the AI agenda is going to be something we'll be returning to over and over and over again, because it is the core of this plan for total human control. Another story this week, again connected, is that they are saying, the Trump regime, that they're going to invite non-mainstream journalists into the White House press corps. And they are saying that such people should apply to join the press corps. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announces they are giving official press passes to new media voices, including independent journalists, podcasters, independent journalists. I bloody love it. Social media influencers and content creators. America's trust in mass media has fallen to a record low. I'll come to the real significance of this in a second, but this is what she said.
And in keeping with this revolutionary media approach that President Trump deployed during the campaign, the Trump White House will speak to all media outlets and personalities, not just the legacy media who are seated in this room. Because according to recent polling from Gallup, Americans' trust in mass media has fallen to a record low. Millions of Americans, especially young people, have turned from traditional television outlets and newspapers to consume their news from podcasts, blogs, social media, and other independent outlets. It's essential to our team that we share President Trump's message everywhere and adapt this White House to the new media landscape in 2025. To do this, I'm excited to announce the following changes will be made to this historic James S. Brady briefing room, where Mr. Brady's legacy will endure. This White House believes strongly in the First Amendment, so it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House.
So what is this really about? If you look at what's happened since Trump came to office just days ago, really, he has been targeting people he thinks are not loyal to him. He wants obedience. He wants loyalty. He wants cap touchers. Yes, sir. No, sir. In every area that he's involved in. So he's been targeting people in government administration, firing them because he don't think they're loyal. In other words, just do anything he says without question. And this is what this press pass thing is all about. See, what's happened is this so-called alternative media, independent media, has been hijacked, particularly since COVID, and massively hijacked by the Trump propagandists And to such a large extent, they have got him elected. So for me, if you are supporting a political party, you are supporting a political ideology, you are not an independent journalist. You simply are not. You're a propagandist for whatever party or ideology you represent. And that's what the alternative media central core, which the algorithms love, has been doing. And now what they want is to invite them, those very same people, into the White House press corps so that they will sycophant on with Trump from those positions. And Alex Jones, who I raise not out of context here, to say the least, has tweeted this week to say, I have been invited to come to Washington, D.C. next week. Well, those people who go to Washington will not be going on a journalistic journey. They will be going on a pilgrimage. And that's what the alternative media has become. Pathetic. Another Trump story, I mean, there's so many. He said that he wants to remove repeat offenders from America, American citizens, and pay a foreign country a, quote, small fee to hold them. This is him laying that out.
We also have many violent criminals in our country, however, that did not necessarily come here illegally, but have been arrested 30 times, 35 times, 41, 42 times in a couple of cases, 25 times, 18 times, many for murder and other heinous charges such as pushing people into subways. As the train's coming along at 45 miles an hour, boom, you get pushed into the subway. They had it last week. Hitting them in the head with baseball bats while they're not looking, punching old ladies in the face, knocking them unconscious and stealing their purse. They even break into apartments and rape elderly women and beat up elderly men, beat them to hell. And I don't want these violent repeat offenders in our country any more than I want illegal aliens from other countries who misbehave. And I say, and this is subject to getting it approved, but if they've been arrested many, many times, they're repeat offenders by many numbers, I want them out of our country. I also will be seeking permission to do so. We're going to get approval, hopefully, to get them the hell out of our country along with others. Let them be brought to a foreign land and maintained by others for a very small fee as opposed to be maintained in our jails for massive amounts of money, including the private prison companies that charge us a fortune.
Now, a lot of people are saying, great, certainly all the MAGA, oh, great, yeah, get them out of the country. The point is that you set precedents and you set the mood. You set a momentum in a certain direction. And it doesn't end with your initial step along that road. So setting the precedent of ejecting American citizens to foreign countries for them to run their lives is something that can be built upon and made more and more extreme. And, you know, it's not dawned on so many people the nature of the extremism and the extremists that are now running the United States. And you, as the saying goes, you give them an inch. Oh, yeah, that's great. And they'll take 100,000 miles eventually. And, we're seeing this dictatorship, dictatorial arrogance pouring out of Trump. In other words, that which controls Trump. In terms of saying we are going to take Greenland, we're going to take back the Panama Canal, where we want to absorb Canada into the United States. All these things are symptoms of the narcissistic tyranny that is unfolding. And I'd love to say otherwise, but we've seen nothing yet. And this is a story about Greenland. Danes in crisis mode in fallout of Donald Trump's explosive 45-minute phone call with country's prime minister after she told him Greenland was not for sale. You don't tell the little boy in short trousers that he can't have his toy. A major diplomatic row has erupted between the US and Denmark over Donald Trump's plans to buy Greenland. It follows an explosive 45-minute phone call by Mr. Trump, 78, to Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, 47. Why we have to know their ages, I don't know. Earlier this month, in which he said to have unleashed a torrent of aggression after she defiantly told him her country was not for sale. Yes, I have just actually read that. Mr. Trump claims Greenland is critical to America's national security and has refused to rule out using military force to take over the self-governing Arctic territory, which has been part of the Kingdom of Denmark since 1814. And so here we have this extraordinary arrogance whereby this guy is saying, well, we want Greenland, so we're having it. What about the people of Greenland? What about the people of Denmark? Oh, no, no matter. So former foreign minister in Denmark, Mogens Lichtoft, described Mr. Trump's plan as an imperial stretch out from a big country towards a very small country. Trump is a bully with mega bullies pulling his strings. Trump's fixation on Greenland is part of his broader desire for American expansionism. He has called for Canada to declare itself a U.S. state, demanded that Panama return control of the Panama Canal, and has renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Yeah, that's changed everything. Well, all those people. All those people who were sleeping in the streets in San Francisco and New York and all these places. They've got homes now because Trump's renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. It's pathetic. And this is a thing about Trump, is he says one thing and you know that eventually he's going to say another, depending on what he thinks suits him in the moment. And here's an extraordinary story, really, given what Musk has been saying about Keir Starmer, and by definition, Trump has been indicating about Starmer. Trump praises Starmer for doing very good job. Now, there's many things that you can say about Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, but the fact that he's doing a very good job is not one of them. He's doing the cult's job. He's doing the World Economic Forum's job. But a very good job, says Trump, not least because Trump is also doing a very good job for the cult and the World Economic Forum. He's just using different words and a different route to do so. Donald Trump has said he thinks Sir Keir Starmer has done a very good job so far and said the pair will speak over the phone in the next 24 hours, which they apparently did. The US president said he and the Prime Minister get along well, despite Sir Keir being liberal, which is a little bit different from me. Well, I don't think so, mate, because you are imposing your will upon the United States and Starmer is imposing his will on the United Kingdom. And both of you are actually imposing the will of the same force. That's how it works. Mr. Trump's warm remarks about Sir Keir were at odds with those of billionaire Elon Musk, best buddy, who has played a starring role in his second presidency so far and has repeatedly called for the Prime Minister to be replaced. And also, by the way, this week, Trump has indicated, he pulled out one of these executive orders, swish of the pen, law of the land, democracy. He pulled out of the World Health Organization, but he said in a speech, he indicated in a speech that if changes were made, he would be open to going back. Whatever he says, he'll say something different eventually. Oh, yeah. Donald Trump approves Peter Mandelson's appointment as new UK ambassador to the US. Donald Trump has approved Lord Peter Mandelson's appointment as the new UK ambassador to Washington. A question mark remains over the Lord's nomination due to his alleged connection to the EU and China. More bullshit. The fact that is not mentioned in this article is that Peter Mandelson, who was a Svengali for Tony Blair and others in the Labour Party of Keir Starmer, is a close, or was a close mate of Jeffrey Epstein. And there are pictures of the two together. And Mandelson appears in Epstein's little black book, apparently, of phone numbers, as does Tony Blair, I recall. And so the peer, Mandelson, has also previously branded the US president as a danger to the world following a war of words in 2019 during Trump's campaign for the White House. But he doesn't say that anymore. He says that he shouldn't have said that now that he's going to be US ambassador. And I'm sure they'll get on fine. It's, what does he say? Mandelson, he praised the US president-elect's straight-talking and deal-making instincts and his great skill as a political campaigner. Let's move on. But not far, because this is a headline this week, which is very relevant to what we've been talking about. More than half of Gen Z believe the UK should be a dictatorship. Now, what we're seeing with Trump is the movement towards this dictatorial control. And I've been laying out in the books for decades the fact that the plan is to create a technocracy ruled by technocrats, also happening with Trump, in which so-called governments are appointed. They're not elected, no ballot boxes. They are appointed. They are appointed technocrats and bureaucrats and what have you, medical people and all the rest. and to bring about public acceptance of that situation, no more elections, they have set out to put complete incompetent morons into political power so that the public will say, as per this survey study, we need a strong leader. We don't need politicians anymore. We don't need elections. Look what they've done to the world. But it's been done on purpose. You know, there are millions of people in countries. There are billions of people in the world. They're not all stupid and they're not all incompetent. It's just that, or corrupt. It's just that people like that get put into political power. So this is the story. Most young people, 52% of Gen Z, aged 13 to 27, are in favor of turning the UK into a dictatorship, according to an alarming study for Channel 4. Most young people are in favor of turning the UK into a dictatorship, according to a deeply worrying study, which has revealed an acceptance of authoritarianism and radicalism among Generation Z. Now, this generation has been systematically mind manipulated and perceptually manipulated to come to these conclusions and many other conclusions that suit the agenda. You know, these are the generations of the smartphone, the generations of the education system, or what passes for it, programming system, that's gone on steroids in terms of selling a vision of the world rather than just informing young people and encouraging them to think for themselves. So they thought the UK would be a better place if a strong leader was in charge, dictator, who does not have to bother with parliament and elections. This has all been systematically injected into the minds of so many young people. 33% suggested the UK would be better off if the army was in charge. Try it. 47% agreed that the entire way our society is organized must be radically changed through revolution. Well, AI revolution, you don't have to do much. Compared with 33% who believe that, of 45 to 65-year-olds who have some longer-term memories of the fact that the world wasn't always like this. And it was based on a sample of 3,000 adults. And what they said is that Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson were among the influences to command trust by 42% of men. Loses the will to live, moves on. Yeah. Scientists call for more research into COVID vaccine, fake vaccine, side effects after unexplained spike in heart conditions. You don't say. Canadian experts, well, who decided they were experts? Oh, the person who wrote the story. Yeah, gotcha. Canadian experts are calling for more research into heart damage linked to COVID fake vaccines. They fear the scale of the issue remains underdocumented. This all sounds good, but there is a little rider I'll come to. Because they say studies have been too narrow and haven't looked at the risk of these injuries months and years after receiving the shot. And that's a very, very good point. If you don't have a reaction immediately after a jab, well, they then start saying, well, it can't be the jab. Well, how do you know that? And how long it takes for the effect to impact? mRNA shots have been shown to cause myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle, and pericarditis, inflammation of the sac-like lining surrounding the heart. The side effect is rare, not as rare as you're claiming, but exactly how rare is still being debated. Now, here's the point. They're calling for further research, noting that the rates of heart conditions globally have increased nearly 40% since the fake vaccines were rolled out in 2021, which needed to be explored for public health reasons. Well, let's explore it, shall we? Well, I'm going to explore it. I'm going to have an explore. You introduce a fake vaccine that clearly has effects on the heart, and since you introduce it, heart conditions globally increase by nearly 40%. Now, let's explore. What could have caused that? Can't think. Oh, but they do have a get-out clause here. But these experts also concede that COVID itself has been shown to cause heart damage, which confuses the issue even more. Now, this is the reason I've been going on and on and on since the spring of 2020 about the fact there has never been a COVID virus. For reasons I explain in the books and videos galore, there never was a fake, or there was a fake virus, but not a real one. And you see, they don't care if you believe that this COVID virus came out of a wet market in Wuhan, or whether it came out of a biolab in Wuhan, so long as you believe there is and was a virus. Because as long as you believe it, they can play that card again, and they can use it for endless reasons, including saying that, oh, well, it's not necessarily the fake vaccine that's causing the heart conditions because COVID causes it. Well, that's a kind of a major miracle that we're looking at here, because it's hard to imagine how a, quote, virus that doesn't exist can affect your heart. It affects your mind because you perceive it exists. But your heart? Nonsense. So, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, or VAERS, an arm of the US Department of Health and Human Services, suggested in a 2022 report that myocarditis onset can start 120 days after vaccination. The Canadian researchers said the study may be missing patients post-vaccine myocarditis due to the limited diagnostic criteria. Exactly. But here's a bloody story. You know, we had a health minister in the UK called Matt Hancock, who lied for a living day after day during COVID and is responsible for untold catastrophes that unfolded, not least among old people in care homes. But then he was replaced by another bloke called Sajid Javid. And he has been questioned by a lawyer representing the vaccine injured. And in Britain, the VAERS system is called the yellow card system. It's the system that is used when people have adverse reactions. They can report those reactions so that people can see what the vaccines, or the fake vaccines in this case, are doing. Now, I'm going to get you to believe something here on behalf of Javid, that even though he was health secretary supposedly running the whole health pyramid in Britain, while he was in office, he had never heard of the yellow card vaccine consequence reporting system. That is what he is asking you to believe. Have a look.
So I wasn't aware of the yellow card sort of scheme.
Mr. Javid, I ask questions on behalf of the COVID adverse reaction and bereaved groups. My questions are about the yellow card scheme, a matter of some importance to those I represent, as you'll understand. You said in your statement that when you were Secretary of State for Health, that the yellow card system was something that didn't come to your attention, and therefore you couldn't answer the inquiry's questions about whether it's effective, and you couldn't make any observations about the scheme and how it could be improved. My question is then, how then was the government effectively monitoring adverse reactions if the Health Secretary yourself, the individual responsible for overseeing the nation's health, was unaware of the primary tool designed for this purpose?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very reasonable question, of course. And what I would say is that, so I wasn't aware of the yellow card sort of scheme.
Understood. But you said in answer to questions to Mr. Keith that you were having meetings about vaccine delivery every day. You're the central role responsible for driving the vaccine project forward. Would you agree that not knowing about the yellow card system, one of the centrepiece systems for adverse effect reporting, highlights a significant gap in the systems designed to ensure that key decision makers like yourself were informed about critical mechanisms for monitoring vaccine safety during the rollout?
I think that, with respect, what I'd say is that I'm not sure me not knowing what the yellow card system is or was would have made any difference in the, because I'm not aware, unless certainly it hasn't been brought to my attention at this point, that there was a problem with the system. There was an issue with the system, and I would suspect the reason it wasn't brought to my attention in those meetings that you just referred to was because no one within my department or the wider department thought it was an issue that was important enough to bring to the Secretary of State.
No wonder the younger generation are sick of politicians, because that is the kind of character that ends up in positions of political power. The idea that you, as health secretary, during an alleged pandemic and the rollout of this fake vaccine, would not be aware of the reporting system of consequences of the fake vaccine is ridiculous, utterly bloody insane. But this is what they do all the time. When they're cornered, as he was there, they just crack on as if they had no idea about something that they should have been focused on to see what the consequences of this fake vaccine were having for people. It's unbelievable that these liars can get into political power, but it's all by design. Another interesting story on the fake vaccine here. It's actually from October the 2nd, 2013, which is very, very significant with this story. DARPA, that's the technological development arm of the Pentagon, awards Moderna Therapeutics a grant for up to $25 million to develop messenger RNA therapeutics, which just happened to be the fake vaccine content makeup that was played out after 2020, 2021. Moderna Therapeutics, the company pioneering messenger RNA therapeutics, a revolutionary new treatment modality to enable the in vivo production of therapeutic proteins, announced today that the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, see my books over and over and over and over, has awarded the company up to $25 million to research and develop its messenger RNA therapeutics platform as a rapid and reliable way to make antibody-producing drugs to protect against a wide range of known and unknown emerging infectious diseases and engineered biological threats. It also says that Moderna's messenger RNA therapeutics platform has the potential to speed the development and manufacture of treatments that can produce a safer, more reliable, and more robust immune response than existing technologies. Well, that didn't bloody age well, did it? And that was 2013. That's how far back this stuff goes and beyond. Now, there's an interesting story for me anyway, this week, when I saw going around the mainstream of the alternative media, a story about Operation Northwoods. And it was like breaking news, Operation Northwoods. And you see a lot of this in the alternative mainstream of the alternative media, the hijack part, as I would call it, where stuff that proper researchers have known since way back is suddenly reproduced as breaking news. And Operation Northwoods was a plan by the Pentagon to stage terrorist attacks against Americans in American cities, against ships and what have you, to blame it on Cuba under Castro to justify an invasion of Cuba. This was at the time of John F. Kennedy, when he was president, before he was murdered in 1963. And that was in my books from 2001, because it was declassified, Operation Northwoods, in 1997. And it's been in my books, and it was circulating widely at the time of 9/11 because so many things described in the Northwoods documents mirrored what actually happened on 9/11. Not least, part of Operation Northwoods was to get a drone plane, a pilotless plane, to be painted in the livery of an airline that would fly across the south of the United States and across Cuban airspace at a very high level. And what they would do was have the normal plane take off from a East Coast airport with, as Operation Northwoods describes, carefully selected passengers. And when it came over Florida, the drone in the same livery would come up from Elgin Air Force Base, I think it was Elgin Air Force Base, and would get close enough for it to appear as one dot on the radar. And then the plane that took off would be landed at Elgin Air Force Base and the passengers taken off. And the drone would then continue across Cuban airspace and would be exploded by radio signal. And it actually says in the Northwoods documents that they would not report it themselves. They would let the international air authorities report what had happened, this plane exploding over Cuba, a passenger plane apparently, to make it, more credible that it wasn't an inside job. And so all this was circulating at the time of 9/11 because of the obvious connection between the two. But now it's breaking news, which is par for the course, like I say. But anyway, it's also good that this is circulating and more people can see it. And here's a report of some background to Operation Northwoods.
Operation Northwoods was a proposed false flag operation against American citizens that originated in the U.S. Department of Defense in 1962. The proposal contained many plans calling for CIA operatives to both stage and commit acts of terrorism against American military and civilians. They would blame it on the Cuban government and use it to justify a war against Cuba. Operation Northwoods detailed many possible terrorist acts. The document included the possible assassination of Cuban immigrants, sinking boats of Cuban refugees, hijacking planes to be shot down or given the appearance of being shot down, blowing up a U.S. ship, and even orchestrating terrorism in U.S. cities. The operation also recommended developing a communist Cuban terror campaign in places like Miami or Washington. This would involve the bombing of U.S. civilians and then placing the blame on the Cuban government to paint a false image of Fidel Castro and the Cuban government. The desired result of this operation would be to place the U.S. in the apparent position of suffering from an irresponsible government of Cuba and develop an international image of Cuban threat. When Operation Northwoods was proposed to President John F. Kennedy, it was rejected. The president said bluntly that we're not discussing the use of military force on civilians. Following the presentation of Operation Northwoods, President Kennedy not only rejected it, but also removed General Lyman Lemnitzer from his position as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
What is not said there is that, yes, Lemnitzer was fired by Kennedy, but he went on to become NATO's Supreme Commander Europe from 1963 to 1969. The cult looks after its own. Now, I'm just going to finish this week's Dot Connector with a quick climate roundup, shall we say. I'm going to start with this story. Electric cars can explode and the public must be warned, say worried UK fire chiefs. Fire chiefs say the public must be told that the huge fire risks are posed by electric vehicles as the government presses ahead with a ban on new petrol and diesel cars. Damaged vehicles could burst into explosive flames and fires could resume days after they appeared to have been extinguished, according to the National Fire Chiefs Council, the professional voice of the UK Fire and Rescue Service. How very bloody green. Thermal runaway can lead to the creation of toxic vapors and gases, such as not exhaustive carbon monoxide, hydrogen fluoride, and hydrogen chloride. Quote, electric vehicles fires present new challenges for fire and rescue services, as suppressing an electric vehicle fire requires large amounts of water. How very green. And the fire can reignite hours or sometimes days later. These are the vehicles that are being forced upon us by these lunatics answering to their super lunatic masters in the shadows. Then we have this one. New findings show no decline in the strength of the Gulf Stream since the 1960s. In July 2023, Georgina Ranard of the BBC reported that scientists say, must be true then, a weakened Gulf Stream, which is a major part of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, easy for you to say, could collapse by 2025. Such is the rush to induce mass climate psychosis, mainstream media might not find the time or have the inclination to report new findings from a group of scientists that found the overall strength of the Gulf Stream has shown no decline since the 1960s. Published by Nature this month, the scientists state they came to their conclusion after examining heat transfers between the sea and the atmosphere. Meanwhile, a group of scientists working for the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recently discovered that the huge flow of tropical water that powers through the Florida Straits and is a key component of the Gulf Stream had remained remarkably stable for over 40 years. And on the basis of these lies, they are transforming human society. That's why we have the lies. Here's a story. Industry will not be able to bear net zero tax, Miliband warns, or warned by others. Now, Ed Miliband is one of these morons I talked about earlier that is discrediting elected politicians, absolutely as a plan, like I say. And he's overseeing the energy and climate policy of Britain. And, well, you know, if he had a brain cell, it would die of loneliness, frankly. But this is the kind of people you have thrust upon us. Steel, glass, and chemical manufacturers have warned they will be driven out of business if they are forced to pay swinging net zero taxes under Ed Miliband's clean power plans. In a letter to ministers, the Energy Intensive Users Group said climate levies designed to cut factory emissions were forecast to almost triple by 2030. Now, this seems crazy until you realize that the deindustrialization of countries is exactly what the game is. It blamed crippling carbon taxes and carbon taxes that are promoted by Elon Musk and high energy prices for the closure of an Ineos refinery at Grangemouth in Falkirk, it's a football team, Scotland. It was the country's last remaining synthetic ethanol plant. Under the UK's emissions trading scheme, manufacturers have legal limits placed upon how much carbon dioxide they can create as waste. They're taxed for anything they emit above this, with quotas reduced gradually over time. The policy was designed to incentivize lower emissions, but has proved controversial because it's nonsense, as manufacturers, including Ineos, argued it put British producers at a disadvantage compared to foreign peers. And also this week, we've got another ignoramus lady. I know, but it's true, who's Chancellor of the Exchequer, called Rachel Reeves. She's announced that they're going to build a third runway at Heathrow. So what happened to net zero then? Oh, that's just for the people. We need growth, she says. Miliband didn't turn up for that announcement. Suppose he's thrown his dolly out of the pram or something. And finally, again, a bit of a theme this week, particularly in the last little while of the dot connector, and that's people put into political office that shouldn't be there. Mayor of anti-car London Council boasts of taxpayer-funded limo. The mayor of the anti-car Labour-run London Council of Lambeth Council is another word for insanity. Look in the dictionary, you'll find it. The first UK local authority to declare a climate emergency in 2019 has boasted, this mayor, of being driven around in a taxpayer-funded limousine. So never mind you're all going to be taxed and fined out of having a car. But we're in limos because we're politicians. John Paul Ennis, the 27-year-old Lambeth mayor, who had plenty of life experience then, discussed the perks of the job, including transport in a nice car, which he described as a vibe on TikTok. Mr. Ennis told DJ AG, an influencer, what's one of those? I'm an influencer, I am. What do? I influence. That the title was Mad and Sick, and said it was pretty nice to wear the ceremonial chain that came with it. In 2019, Lambeth imposed higher parking fees after becoming the first local authority to declare a climate emergency. It's the most expensive borough in London in which to park. Per hour, it's £13.23 to park your bloody car. And in the social media clip, Mr. Ennis was asked by the DJ if he could get a free permit because of the prices in the South London borough. The mayor suggests that he parks at Tesco for a few hours and then move the car around. Now, clearly, the bloke's an idiot, but like I say, they want idiots in positions of power so that the public are open to replacing the idiots with appointed idiots, elected idiots with appointed idiots. And in the end, that's what it all is. It's a conspiracy based on manipulation of perception, because what we think dictates how we behave and what we choose to do and not do. So what's the answer? Well, we take our minds back and stop giving them away. Well, that's it. Another Dot Connector. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now.